Hey guys, welcome to the Hotline Chat. You know where it's at. It's your girl Lo. It's the conversation for me.
It's the authenticity for me.
It's the friendship and good vibes for me.
And welcome in.
Yes, another week with Sabrine gone. We are sending love over to you. We're excited for when we're actually all reunited. Don't look at me like that.
I'm just singing. Singing.
Yeah. So, how's your day?
Cool. Been chilling. Went to the gym. And chilled out and came in.
Okay, cool. My day's been busy, but I wanted to talk about this topic today because I feel like it doesn't get talked about often. So, today we are talking about codependency and counterdependency. So, what would you define codependency as?
I guess. So my initial thought when you say dependency is like, I guess being dependent on a person. Mm-hmm. That's my first thought.
Yeah. So we'll go to the textbook definition, right?
All right.
So I know a lot of people when they hear codependency, they have like some idea of what it is. Counterdependency, I feel like, is not something that a lot of people know
I've never
about.
heard that.
Yeah. So codependency, in simplest terms, is when one partner needs the other and needs to be needed. So basically, their happiness, their identity, everything is dependent or based on that other person. So yeah, you were right. Counterdependency is the complete opposite. Why you rub your hands like that?
I was right.
Yeah, he was right. Oh. But yeah, counterdependency is the opposite. So counterdependency is a little more complex because it can look healthy, but there are some telltale signs. And counterdependency is basically when you fight intimacy or you create a sense of, why are you looking at me like that?
I feel like you know how I don't know, this feels like a setup. Like, what is all this?
Why do you feel like it's a setup?
Let's continue.
Anyways, back to what I was saying. Let me go ahead and find what I was saying. Okay, so counterdependency, some signs of that is difficulty being close to others, a strong need to be right all the time, self-centered and egotistical, a resistance of refusal to ask for help, expects perfection in self and others, extreme discomfort, appearing weak or vulnerable, and has difficulty relaxing and is addicted to activities like work or exercise. So a person who is counter-dependent might look like somebody who has autonomy or, self-governance over themselves, but if they aren't unable to take people in or have a level of intimacy, then that's a sign of counterdependency. So, why do you feel like you're being set up? Let's talk about it. Why? Why? Why do you feel attacked?
I don't know. So when you say, what was the intimacy part?
Which one? For codependency or counterdependency?
Counter.
A lack of intimacy. So you're unable to get to a certain level of intimacy in your relationships. So let's say, for example, on the outside looking in, it might look like you have a healthy relationship. Like, you take care of yourself. You don't need any help, all these things. But when you're unable to be vulnerable or you're unable to, you're unable to put some of those walls down and have that balance, then those are signs of counterdependency. And counterdependency, when I was researching it, often comes from early childhood. So it's I think 0 to 36 months, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like within the first 3 years of someone's life. And it's oftentimes because of the care or lack of care that they didn't receive. And so that's usually what causes it. Or if you're around, for both codependency and counterdependency, if you've been around trauma or a household that has like addiction or things like that, those can be the things that add to it. Make sense? Yeah. So I wanted to talk about it because I feel like in a lot of relationships, there are like codependency, you know what I'm saying, or counterdependency things, and I feel like everybody kind of has a mixture of both, in a healthy relationship as well. So yeah, what do you think? Do you feel like you're codependent, counterdependent, or somewhere in the middle?
I mean, I do fit a lot of the boxes in the counter dependent part.
Okay.
But yeah, codependent. I'm very. I have been that in my younger years. I have been that in like my first relationship. Some of my first relationships, I've been that. And then I think the reason I lean more to the counter dependent is mostly because those didn't work out well. And then when relationships end, things of that nature, you don't know what to do with yourself. You're kind of like your life revolved around that person. What you woke up and you did was going to revolve around that person. And then once that person is no longer in your life, you got to figure out what you're going to do with yourself. And so I think I lean more onto the counter dependent part of it in my older years.
Yeah. So I would say I don't think that you're like counter dependent, and I don't think that you're codependent. I think that you have a healthy balance of both, because
when you was reading off the list.
Well, here's what I would say.
Okay.
I would say that you do lean more towards counter dependency, but you have the ability to at least have a level of intimacy and care in your relationships, and you're able to have a level of vulnerability. It just looks a little different.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are definitely some walls and stuff like that. So anyways, you were talking about like in your previous relationship, you were like your first relationship, you were codependent.
Correct.
Why do you think? Because I feel like that happens often, because our idea of like what a relationship should look like or what love looks like isn't like clearly defined. And so I know for me, I wouldn't say in my relationships, but I would say like in my friendships, right? There was a codependency on like, there was codependency because I wanted everything basically revolved around how they viewed me, right? So it's like I made decisions based off of what they said. I looked at my self-worth based on how they perceived me.
Is this a younger you? Or like
younger me.
Like high school type deal? Or?
No, college.
Okay.
Because high school, from like, when I was young to high school, I didn't really have much social interaction.
Okay.
Because I, strict parents, you got to stay in the house. So college was really my first experience on like friendships and having different levels of like intimacy, not physical intimacy, because intimacy doesn't have to be physical, but different levels of like emotional intimacy in a friendship. So that was, and because I had lived my life for such a long time pleasing people and making other people happy, I kind of just translated that into my friendships. So that was definitely something that I think when I was younger, it enabled me to have codependent friendships. And it really robbed me of being able to have my own identity outside of this person. So I feel like oftentimes, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it is because I was talking to a friend last week, and as we were talking, I was just like, dang, that's crazy, because I've heard this from someone else in a different way. And when I took a look at like the entirety of everything, because I wanted to do this topic even way before,
I remember.
But I really wanted to do it now, because I feel like now, with the age of social media and with how relationships are being viewed and with how people want relationships to be, it really is on the extreme. It's either I don't need you and I'm good by myself, even though I'm in this relationship, or it's my entire life revolves around you. So I feel like there's like a social framework for why people fall into codependency outside of just traumas and things that they've dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, when you even say codependency, I even think of things outside of relationships. I think there are people who are codependent on, whoever the president is, you know what I'm saying? Whoever, things of that nature. Like, I go back to what I was thinking. I was having a conversation with someone a few months ago, and I was like, there's a lot of people, like when Trump left office, that are going to be out of a job because they have nobody else to talk about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they built their life around that, and then after that, they don't know what they're going to be doing with their lives. But codependent, like for me, it took a while because I was very on the extreme end of counter dependency because I always looked at a relationship, and especially like not a friendship, but just like a boyfriend girlfriend type thing. There you go, romantic relationship is like that. If that, I always look at that. At some point, this might end, and then when it ends, I want to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. And even in the beginning of that, I set up and be like, hey. All right, we cool, we doing, but I'm prepared. So if they leave, I know what's going on. I'm good. And for me, even codependency makes me uncomfortable. Like even when a partner is codependent on, like has that codependency with me, because it's just, I never want to be somebody's world that they want to revolve around. Like that shit, I don't like that. That is very, I don't know. It makes me feel nasty with that shit because it's just like, people can manipulate and things of that nature, and I don't want to manipulate anybody. But it's if you don't have any type of if everything you do revolves around me, then how can I trust that you're making a decision based upon you as well?
And that's one of the things that they were talking about in some of the research I was doing. They were saying people fall into these relationships where someone is codependent on the other, sometimes by accident, because one partner is a little more dominant and has like a stance, and then the other partner ends up basically making that person their entire world. Mm-hmm. And so even if you don't necessarily want to fall into that trap, because you're in that relationship and that person is basically viewing you as their everything, manipulation happens regardless, or like toxic behaviors end up coming out regardless. And I think that's difficult. I feel like, I don't know, being able to navigate like codependence, what's healthy and what's not, as far as codependency, can be hard sometimes because you want to be connected to somebody. You want to feel like, I love this person, so, I care about their opinion. But there is a sense of like separation, not even separation, but there is a sense of independence and autonomy that you have to have in order for a relationship to be healthy. And I feel like we're not necessarily taught that, you know?
Well, to be honest with you, like, I think that's more of a new thing. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think my grandparents worked that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they worked as like, oh, my grandma, my granddad was, no, actually, I know that my granddad wasn't like, she wasn't revolving around him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't that deep. I think we just, again, going back to what you said before, like we went to the extreme ends of things where, like if we're together, we have to be together in all places, like just be together all the time. You're my best friend, this and that, and that nature. I mean, even in, like I say, in other relationships I've had before where, like I remember before I was with someone, she was like, well, we don't have anything in common. We don't have anything in common. I'm like, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? What does that matter? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would, like, for some people who don't have things in common, you come together and you learn about different things from each other, right? But like everybody wants to be, I think it's weird to me because everybody wants to be together all the time. But like, for what I see from nowadays, from social media, is that people are so easily to get rid of someone too as well. So.
Yeah, facts. So it's like, how do you navigate? What are things what are red flags to you? So like, I feel like people have different levels of what they think is like acceptable or unacceptable within the context of a relationship or friendship or whatever. So, and even like people because codependency also deals with like people who have substance abuse problems. So like you're dependent on, the substance in order for you to be able to get through your day. So like, what are some like red flags for you or things that you try to avoid, whether it's in like work relationships, friendships or romantic relationships when it comes to codependency?
Red flags, I would see. I mean,
or counterdependency, dependency in general.
I haven't had a friend. Well, there's one friend I know who is. I got a homeboy he's on that counter dependence part of it. But really, what can you do? You can offer help because there's times where I know he's been fucked up, and I try to be like, hey, you need something? What you need me to do? This and that, and the answer is always no. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Always the answer. He refused to take help, and all I can do is keep checking up on him, make sure he's good. If something goes up or something like goes down or something like that, but in that situation, there's not really much you can do without going over that boundary that he's already said.
But what are red flags to you?
I think just saying that, like you seeing someone go through something and seeing the situation and they still saying no. Like there's been times where like if you see someone that like you have an issue where it's a home thing where you're trying to find shelter over your head type deal. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, here, you can stay with me. This is what it is. But you steady refusing, but you really don't have a place to stay. And you're just saying that out of pride. I don't know, maybe it's a manly thing or whatever it is, but you're saying that out of pride. That's a red flag for me. Now, is that something that, like I said, is that something that I can, I can say like, hey, you don't gotta be tough like this, G. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't gotta sleep outside. Right. But you know, what he says is what he says, and that's his boundary he set. So I gotta respect that. But codependency, I've only had that issue once a while ago, years ago, but it's kind of a thing where like you see that because the person, especially if they're codependent on you in their friendship. I'm speaking on the friendship for sure. When they codependent on you, they start infringing on your boundaries. Like you'd be like, you know, I'm going home, chilling. This is what I'm doing. And like you would have a conversation about how you going home, you chilling, and won't bother. And they will literally infringe on your boundaries with nothing but just them wanting to satiate their addiction to you. So
yeah, I remember one of my friendships. I didn't realize that it was like codependent until way after.
Was the person codependent on you, or the other way around?
I think we were both codependent on each other, and that's why it was toxic.
All right.
But people were like, "Oh, you guys are just so close. Oh my God, you guys are just so close." But when I really looked at it, my entire goal was to make her happy, and her entire goal was to, maybe she was counter-dependent then, actually, now that I think about it. So I think, I don't know, actually. All I know is it was toxic, and there were dependency issues. So like, okay, I always try to make her happy, and she always wanted things to be a specific way. So I guess she would be more counter-dependent, because there was like manipulation and things involved.
Okay.
But I feel like one of the greatest lessons that I learned from that is boundaries, right? So do you feel like we are taught boundaries enough? Like just growing up in society in general, do you think that that's something that is taught? And if it's not, do you think that that's something that should be taught?
It should. Who would teach it? The parents?
Parents, even in school, you know what I'm saying? That's definitely something that, you know, that they can have as a part of like curriculum. Because I mean, if we have more tools that we can use relationally, right? So let's say, for example, you take a communication class. You know, one of the things that they could talk about is boundaries, because that's a part of communication, or, you know, whatever, interpersonal communication. So I feel like that's something that could be taught even in the school system.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not saying that this is a correct way with everything, and it's not the correct way with everything, but I'm a big thing on like letting life teach you. And like for that, I would say life will teach you when to set up boundaries and when not to. For most people, I don't know. I'm not saying for all. I think for me, I had an issue with that when I was younger, because my homeboys, like, there'd be times I didn't want to go nowhere, you know what I'm saying? They made me go somewhere, you know what I'm saying? And like, I didn't set boundaries. Like, there'd be times I went, hey, we're going to the club. And I'm not even a club person, but I end up having to go as in, you know, not so they don't see me as like a person as an outsider or maybe something like that.
So how did you navigate that, and how did you learn to develop boundaries?
So, I mean, there had to be, I had a talk and I separated myself from certain things, right? And then people start, like, for me, it's not a big group of us, right? So it's like, you know, 5 of us at the total. So what I did was, as I got older, you know, I'm working, things of that nature. What I did was start setting things like, hey, I just learned how to say no. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. And after a while, they start to learn that. Now there is some, when it comes to men sometimes, there is some ego that's involved, right? Because like sometimes your friends feel like you belong to them or something like that, or you telling me no, this and that, and sometimes it gets like physical altercations happen. But like regardless of that physical altercation happen or not, if you still stick by the no and this is what I want to do, then I mean things usually work out later on. But like even when I moved to Minnesota, like I never our boundaries were always set. Like if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. And I learned that from dealing with having to face that instead of running away from it with my friends. So I don't know, it's hard to teach something that's so.
What gave you that courage or that strength to be able to say no though? Because I feel like everybody has a point. If you've gotten to a point in life where you have boundaries and you understand boundaries, where you kind of overcome the fear of saying no to the people that are close to you. And there's always backlash because they're used to you saying yes, you know? So how did you kind of, like, what gave you the tenacity to be able to do that?
I think age. I think when you get older, there's certain things that you just, like you start thinking about the things that you've done and then things you're like, I don't have to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like what's the worst? Like I'm not losing anything. You know what I'm saying? If we end friendships over this, then it wasn't never a real friendship, right?
Do you feel like your life, like you would have been able to receive more had you said no more often earlier?
It's hard for me to tell because again, if there's certain situations that I was put in from not saying no, that taught me like some lessons that I still carry on to this day. And those experiences I wouldn't trade for anything because they taught me some things. So it's hard to tell because like then if I said no, then I betrayed an experience that I didn't have. And I probably wouldn't be the person that I am today. So that's when I say like life teaches you things. And sometimes life is, I mean, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but you know, a lot of times life is on time to teach you what you need to know for the future. Did I just drop gems? I just dropped gems. So bird hand rail, you know. Okay. But I just things like that. I don't know. It's hard to teach something that's so not like you really have to, especially like what grade you gonna teach it in, this and that. Like it's so hard. Like I know, like it's really hard to teach something like that. Yeah,
but I feel like more people. Like boundaries was never in my vocabulary.
No.
Until I was 22.
It's not in mine now.
Well, okay. Well,
I mean, I talked to other people.
But like you know, like now you can say it was boundaries.
Yeah, and I talked to other people about setting boundaries. Like when my friends come to me about stuff like that,
so
like
it is. So now it's like it's something that's a part of your conversation. So like for me, it wasn't a part of like I couldn't identify or understand what the word was for what.
Did you see examples though growing up of like maybe your parents setting boundaries maybe?
So for me, no. I think that there was a lack of boundaries in my life. And that's why I said like I lived my life in a way where everything revolved around making others happy. From the moment I set foot in the United States of America, I made a choice. And that's one of the things that I realized, like, even way before therapy. Like, I had made a choice when I came to the U.S. that I was going to do everything in my power to make my parents happy because I felt like my grandma had given me up to them because I never knew them, you know? So when I was 5 and I came here, my identity was shaped based on that. And so there were no boundaries because it wasn't about me and it wasn't about what I desired. It wasn't about who I was. It wasn't about any of that. It was about what can I do to make these people happy? And I actually received positive things from that. You know, I got straight A's. I was a great student. I was able to, you know, get opportunities and all these different things. And so on the outside looking in, it would look like my life was great because of these accolades that I had. But internally, I feel like when you're dependent or when there's a lack of boundaries, you know, there's always going to be a feeling of a sense of missing yourself or a sense of not feeling whole and complete. So it wasn't until I had left college and decided that, you know what I'm saying, Hamlin wasn't for me, that I started kind of learning to speak what I wanted and stepping in and saying no to things. So I was like kind of like on this journey to try to figure out how to have more access to myself, more autonomy, and more of an understanding of who I was. And then in that, I was still kind of figuring it out in my friendships, because like I said, I wasn't exposed to having friends really until, you know, I was in like really close relationships until I was in college. Yeah. And so when it got to a point where it got to, with the friendship that I said was really toxic, when it got to a point where things were kind of like, hey, this is not a healthy friendship, one of my friends said to me, my best friend, I talked about this last time, she was like, you don't love yourself. Because if you loved yourself, you wouldn't be in this situation. And I know that I've said that to some of my friends too, like, you know, this person is dependent on you, or you're dependent on this person. And if you are in this relationship where you're not happy, or you feel like your sense of who you are is being lost, then that means that there's a sense of codependency or counterdependency that's, you know, crushing your spirit and crushing who you are. And if you love yourself enough and you know your worth enough, then you wouldn't stay in that situation. And so she recommended this book called Boundaries. I forgot who it was by, but if I find out, I'll put like a little link or whatever. But she recommended this book, and I said, Boundaries? I said, what's that? You know what I'm saying? Because I never understood that. I think that's where like my mental health journey really started like coming into play, and me starting to understand like things that I could do so that I could have a better experience of life and a better experience within myself. I had kind of already started that journey, but articulating it kind of became a little easier after that. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that those were instances where I started seeing examples of that. I would say specifically with my friend. Shout out to you, Tanea. You're the best. With my friend, that's really when I started understanding and getting to a point where I could see more examples of what setting boundaries looked like.
Yeah, because when I think about it, like I remember my mom. I mean, again, we didn't use the word boundaries, but she had boundaries, and you know, not talking about with us, but like the other people in our family. Like, you understand, my mom was like one of probably like 6 or 7 sisters or whatnot, and they all was mostly in the close area. But every time something happened, you know, she didn't have to be a part of it. I mean, she did what she had to do for one of the sisters that was always had some issues or whatnot. But if she didn't want to do it, she didn't do it. And every time, I mean, she had a couple times she had a boyfriend. He crossed the boundary. He was out that motherfucker. You ain't see him no more.
And I think another part of that too is our culture is community oriented. So it's like me is you, is we, is us. You know what I'm saying? So you're like, for me, I was taught that, like I said in other podcasts, like your issues are my issues are my issues. You know? So I feel like that also contributed to, because setting boundaries looks really different depending on, I feel like, culture. It can sound different. You know what I'm saying? What one person says, one of my friends was telling me, like, dang, you really blunt. Like, and they have like a Kenyan background, you know, like, you're really blunt. Maybe there's a different way that you could say that where you're still finessing and still saying what you need to say, but not as direct. So I feel like there's a cultural connotation to how you can set boundaries.
So I guess there has to be a middle ground, I'm guessing, though, from setting boundaries and actually, if you have relationships, there is a time where you have to show up.
What do you mean?
So, like, any relationship, friendship, whatever it is, you have to be there to show up. You have to be present at some point.
Facts.
Like, because sometimes, you know, there's a extreme of boundaries, I would guess, right? So like you can be setting boundaries. Like I don't want to come. I don't want to do nothing. I don't want to do anything. But how is this friendship being nurtured? I guess
that's like that counterdependency, right? Where it's like it's not you setting boundaries. It's you having a boundary between you and another person. Yeah. So it's not about like specific situations. It's just about you not feeling like you can be, close with another person or wanting to take that step.
You ever found yourself being counter-dependent?
So, yes. In my life, if I had something that I needed to do and it was work-related or just life-related, I would be the person to do it. I didn't trust people to do it because people disappointed me. The times that I did ask for help, especially people that I helped, for years and really went out of my way. I remember when I was living on my own for the first time, I was in a really bad spot. I really shouldn't have been living on my own at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to keep it a buck. But I remember I had a car prior to that, and I was driving all my friends around. I took one of my friends out to a school like 3 hours away. Took one of my friends out to her school 5 hours away. You know what I'm saying? With just doing the most. And so I asked, we're not going to talk about it. So I asked one of my friends, I was like, hey, can you take me to, I think it was like work or somewhere, but it was like on the way, and they only lived about 5 minutes away from me. And she was like, nah, I can't do it. I'm like busy right now. Or she basically gave like some excuse, but I could tell it wasn't like something that was pressing. Mm-hmm. She just chose not to do it. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was like, dang, I've never asked this person for anything. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of was like a slap in the face, and it built up this sense of not trusting people to help me, because I felt like, dang, like people aren't there to actually help you. People aren't there to support you. People only want what they can get out of you. So all you can do is give yourself and not expect anything back and take care of yourself. And the same thing kind of happened in the friendship that was really toxic. I opened myself up and allowed myself to, get some help, and it ended up being a slap in my face when the person was like, I did this for you, and you're like, chill. Like, I've done all these other things for you. So I got to a point where I didn't trust other people to support me and be there for me. And also in my career, I didn't trust people to do what they needed to do because I felt like I could do it faster. But one of the things that in my therapy session I was talking to my therapist about was, now I feel like I'm at a point where I need some sort of guidance, and support is important to me, because for me, I realized that I can go and do things completely by myself, right? But it's going to be harder, and it's going to be a longer race. And you know what I'm saying? It's already a marathon, so there's no reason for me to prolong it even further, So yeah, I was definitely counter-dependent. I didn't need nobody for nothing. Even in my romantic relationship, it wasn't really until, Brian, that I started like feeling like I could have a space where I could depend on someone romantically. Because prior to that, I just didn't feel like I was safe in any situation. So yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah, because I can even think of a time where I was down. There was a period in my life where I was down bad, didn't have a car, was riding a bus, things of that nature. But I would never ask. I barely asked any friends unless it was like they was on their way home or something like that for a ride to the crib. Even if I had to walk home, like there's been times like I had to walk from Medona Heights to fucking St. Paul, or Medona Heights to Emerald Grove Heights. And I'd rather do that than ask for a ride, and shit seems stupid now. Like, I need to just ask somebody for something.
Isn't that crazy? Because now I feel like for both of us looking back, I feel like we were both people that were willing to help people at the drop of a dime, but wouldn't accept help.
Yeah. And I think part of it for me was like, I didn't want to put somebody in a position to disappoint me. You know what I'm saying? Because once somebody give you like when you ask somebody for something, they give you some bullshit.
Yes.
And it never sit right with me. Yes. And I didn't want to put people in a position which to disappoint me, which it's kind of counterintuitive, because how would you know if somebody, like, why keep a friendship if it hasn't been, like, you don't know if they're there, but you know.
And if it's a real friendship, because I feel like the friends that I have now, I know that I can rely on them, and I feel like hopefully they know that they can rely on me, you know? So it's like, I feel like that's an indication that the people that you're around might not necessarily be 100% able to give you what you need. I wouldn't say that they're not for you, because people have different capacities of being able to be there, but maybe that person just isn't at the same level when it comes to reciprocating the things that you give to them. So I feel like that maybe then that's an indication to, like, you know, start expanding your circle to more people that will support you and be there, create that tribe that, you know, people talk about a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like that's very important, because like growing up, I think that's another one of those life lessons where you grow up with people and you might have a group of friends and they're not very supportive or anything like that, but you're just around those people just because, like,
that's
you
what
live
you know.
around, that's what you know. This is where you live around, things of that nature. I think one of the things in your story that I kind of hear a lot sometimes out there is like, you know, things change when you got to college. That's when you really, you know, started on the journey of figuring out who you were, and also like finding like friends and things of that nature, and the friend groups and everything like that. I hear that from a lot of people. Like, once you get to college, and I think that's the same thing happened to me when I came here to college. I think. Like I really I started meeting lifelong friends that, you know, I really started understanding what friendship was. And it didn't have to revolve around some sort of struggle or like survival or something like that.
And I feel like when you start figuring out what you want, that's when you start figuring out who you need around you. Yeah. You heard that? Woo! Right. But I'm serious. Like, I feel like when you start figuring that out, you really do start gravitating. Even if you don't gravitate towards those people, you kind of start seeing, this is actually not what I like, or this is actually more of what I need. And then you start putting yourself in environments that like help you to actually get that, you know? Yeah.
So, and even going back to the CounterDependency?
CounterDependency?
Yeah. CounterDependency, like, it's hard to last that in a relationship as well, in a romantic relationship.
Some narcissists are counter-dependent.
Yeah. But,
why you do that?
I don't know. Just, I felt like you're throwing shots. But all right, look.
You're not a narcissist.
I don't know. Just even past relationships, like, I've gotten that where I was like, I was dating this girl, and what I was doing, I was trying to be, you know how you try to be a gentleman, right? Well, you wouldn't know. But anyway, try to be a gentleman. You don't want to make the first move, none of that stuff. You don't want to like move in a sexual way because you don't know what the woman is on. And then after some months, I forget what it was, but like it was like a couple of months or something like that. And then I think we stopped talking, and we talked texting each other, and she was like, well, you never showed me any intimacy or anything like that. But I got that from a few women that I've dated. Like, you know, I'm not very intimate and things of that nature. And I'm that's something I worked on, but you know, I'm not very intimate or anything like that. But it doesn't stand to last in a relationship at all, because all you're doing is you're not everybody in relationships. You don't have to be their world, but people want to be needed.
Yes.
Like, yeah, go ahead.
And I think it's healthy to have some sense of, like, dependency. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily like they're your world, but if you're in a relationship, you know, seeking your partner's advice on one of the examples that I was reading, like major issues, or being able to have a conversation about, you know, like, hey, I'm really going through this, and, you know, feeling like you have that space. But I feel like the moment that it becomes unhealthy is when you can't recognize where you begin and that person ends, you know? It's important to have, like, your individual... Matter of fact, let's talk about space, because that's a huge part of codependency. Okay. You know, I know, like, for a lot of the friends that I've had, they'll talk about how, like, you know, the person that they're with constantly wants to be around them, and you know what I'm saying, like they need space and they want some time to like themselves. So it's like, how I feel like it looks different for each person, because sometimes I feel like there's compatibility when it comes to how much space somebody needs or how much space somebody doesn't need. So like, how do you navigate that? Or like, what are your thoughts on that space in a relationship and codependency?
So space, it goes for me is two things: is having space and allowing space. So what happens in a relationship is, so for me, I speak for myself. Like I need my spaces sometimes, because what happens is, and I think it's just a product of me going through life, but I'm so used to being by myself that I like that alone time. I like that being able to chill, ain't got to talk. And if you can, and if I have a significant other that can exist in that space, that's totally fine. Like we can just exist in that space and not speak. We don't have to have a deep conversation. We can just be sitting there chilling, watching TV or whatever. But then also in a relationship, you have to allow space. You have to allow space for that other person to come in and be able to be part of that, be part of what you have going on and things of that nature. I have gotten better with that over time, but I never allow. For me, it was hard to allow space because I valued my space so much that I was afraid to. I'm not afraid, but I didn't want to give it up. So it's like I think that's my thought process, and only allowing space on it.
Yeah, I think space is necessary for a relationship to work. I think sometimes even when there's like issues, I think sometimes people are taught that you have to work it, like you have to deal with it right then and there. You got to talk about it right in the moment. And I think that sometimes understanding when you need some time just to get into a space where you can talk about it, or understanding when you need some time just to be able to reflect and really understand what the root cause of the issue is, helps to make the relationship better.
I don't know, because the hard part of it in reality, for the reality sake of it is like, say if you get into it with your partner, right?
Yep.
I don't think you're like it's rare that each person is taking space to really reflect, like taking the space to like think about the issue and maybe come back to it with a fresher mindset. Most of the time, each person is going to talk to that with another person, and it depends on what that other person is going to put into them, how they're going to come back into that.
But I think even if you go talk to another person, like let's say, for example, I'm venting to you and I'm like, hey, this is going on. I just needed to like process this or whatever the case may be. Your intent matters. So if my intent is to get into a space where I can find a solution for it, then what I'm going to be seeking from you is some sort of understanding. And I'll be able to understand, okay, he didn't provide me with more clarity on what I can or can't do, or he did provide me with that. Okay. So I feel like if your intent is to just, you know what I'm saying, just sit in your emotion. Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, I mean, isn't that most people? I mean, because like if you're angry, your intent is just to really
release the anger.
Release the anger and defend your whatever you had going on in that situation. Like defend your point. Most people, like when you're angry and you're fresh and you're like, I can't this and that. Now you might talk to somebody who'd be like, hey, well, maybe you could have approached this way, right? And it could have happened that way. Or you might approach somebody like, yeah, fuck him. You know what I'm saying? That might be the deal.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, regardless of whatever the immediate reaction is, and this is why I said space is important. Because what we do in a lot of relationships, not even just romantic, but even friendships or any, let's say even in the work environment, you know what I'm saying? Somebody does something to you. They eat your food out of the fridge time and time again. That would piss me off. Time and time again, you feel me? You gonna be like, listen, who took the food out the fridge again? Yeah. And it's It'll
be the first time for me. Lunch ain't like, you only get an hour.
That happened to me.
Oh, it's only a lunch.
Yeah. But anyway, so like somebody keeps doing something to you, or let's say that there's an issue, there's gonna be like that immediate reaction of like wanting to, say something, right? Which is fine, because that's like a human reaction. But I think when you can start learning the things that, learning and knowing, oh, I'm upset in this moment, and recognizing it, then you could step back for a second and then decide, hey, I'm going to look for a solution, or I'm going to look for whatever.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good example. I got a good example of that as well. And it's in the workspace as well. Like years ago, not years ago, but like 2 years ago, I was going back and so how we have it set up is like a person in the back brings out a customer's repaired device out to the customer, right? So I seen a customer was waiting for a long time, so I went back and said, "Hey, is anybody check in and see?" Because I have a customer been waiting out there for that long. The person in question kind of went off on me like, "Well, why can't you do it? This ain't nobody." I'm like, "Yo," I was like trying to take it back. I sat back and I said, "Okay," and I sat back. I said, "Okay," and I left the door and I found some, and the person came out and grabbed it, but I didn't act in the moment because in the moment, nothing would have came out of that. It would have just been us yelling, and then I probably wouldn't look crazy because I was about to go. I would have went in on it, but and then later on, like the next time I seen that person, they apologized. They were like, I'm sorry. I was in the moment. It was a hate. So sometimes like things happen in the moment, and sometimes you do like I started learning this a few years ago that things happen in the moment, and then you have to step back and like really like do this need to be addressed right now, or do I need to take some time and be like, okay, wait till my emotions are out of it before I go address it.
And when you understand yourself, you're able to recognize that. Like when you start realizing who you are, what you want, what you need, then you're able to kind of be more aware of that. When you're dependent on someone else, it's hard for you to be able to step away and be like, hey, this is how I see it, because you're viewing their emotions and their feelings and you take it on as your own and vice versa, So I feel like that's why I say it's important to have a level of understanding when it comes to space. And it's okay sometimes too. Like, I think it's important to normalize having alone time to yourself and really being able to just work on yourself. It's great to be in a relationship, but it's also great to have a relationship with yourself.
Yeah, it's just hard because like I said, like you said before as an example, like the extremes are very extreme, and like even in relationships now, or like people like once they find someone, they got to be together all the time. Sometimes things of that nature, so it's hard. And I've had a conversation with a couple of my friends. Even just like, how do you expect to find yourself if you're always in a relationship? You know what I'm saying? Because like the relationship part is just like it distracts you from like dealing with the stuff of your dealing with yourself, and it's just a distraction. Now I'm not saying it's impossible to do so, but it does make it a little bit more difficult to do so. So if
you're in the habit of going from one relationship to the other without ever having time in between, and I think that if you're with the right person, you can say, hey, I need some time. You know what I'm saying? To like figure out this, and it should be fine. Or, even if it's not, but it's important to be able to take the time that you need to understand yourself, process, your traumas, unpack the things that you need to unpack so that you can be better for yourself and for the person that you're in a relationship with too.
Yeah. I think, what do you think, even going with that codependency and then space, like it brings to mind some of the memes I see where it says like, it shows a picture like me and somebody's son and stuff like that, right? Do you think that is a type of codependency, or do you think is a person, is yourself that in a relationship, like you just like, okay, I can just see myself being in a relationship, that's it, or have they found someone? I'm not saying that you can tell from just that, but from that, I'm just saying like, I don't know.
Rephrase your question.
So like you see that sign that says me and somebody's son, and they post that, right? And they just like, oh, and maybe it's a constant thing, right? Not just one time. Do you see that as a person who just yearns to be in a relationship that escape themselves?
If they're constantly seeking somebody
to
be with? Yeah, I would definitely say if like you're constantly I think that everybody wants love, right? Or people want the idea of what love looks like.
Companionship.
Companionship. They want somebody that's going to be there for them. And sometimes people are willing to take it at all costs, no matter what it's going to cost them. And so I think that if you're constantly looking for someone to, make you happy, Like if your joy and your happiness is dependent on the person, not to say that, hey, if we're enjoying each other's company, that I'm not happy, or not to say that I'm not happy to be, with somebody, but I'm saying if your emotions and how you view yourself is tied to you being in a relationship, then that might be an indication that you're dependent on another human being for your joy, or the other thing I would say real quick too is people who look for validation in the relationship when it comes to how they physically, like, let's say for example, before you go there. Okay, so let's say for example, I thought she was, okay. Let's say for example, I'm in a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So the person I'm in a relationship with is going to be attracted to me, and I'm going to be attracted to the person I'm in a relationship with. Let's say for example, I decide to wear like a dress or whatever. If every single decision that I have as far as what I wear is based on what that other person thinks, then that's not a good sign. Or if every single thing that I choose to do with my body, when it comes to my health, when it comes to my physical appearance, is only dependent on that person, then that might be a sign. Unless you're in a relationship where it's not about love and it's more about you looking a type of way and them exchanging that for funds or money or whatever, because there are different types of relationships. But if you're in a relationship where you're trying to have love and that person's opinion is more valuable, that's what it is. It's more valuable than your opinion of yourself. Then that's
when I think about my journey, I even me trying to like find myself, I didn't say I was trying to find myself for a relationship.
Right.
Like the relationship part was like, if it come, type deal.
Right.
For me. And it's not like, to be honest with you, I'm not saying that this is a perfect way of doing things, because like either or, like nobody's going to do these two things perfectly. Facts. Like you can't weigh both things perfectly. For me, I weighed heavy into myself, and then like the relationship stuff was second. You know what I'm saying? I had to like learn that stuff on the fly, and like the feedback I got from past relationships made me make changes throughout the years. But and then there's other people who do it the other way, where the relationship is the only part. What the other way is, if you put that and you start building yourself for a relationship, or for the purpose of a relationship, like you kind of lose focus on yourself, and then once you get in a relationship, it's got hard to really deal with yourself and focus on yourself and try to find yourself and find out who you are and things of that nature. I've talked to people who've been in long relationships before, like as friends, and you will ask them like, hey, what hobby? Like they be like, I just don't know what to do with myself, this and that. I'm like, hey, what hobbies you got? And they don't have any. And I'm like, you have anything you like? I don't know what I like. You know what I'm saying? I like, things of that nature. And it's a tough place to be in. Not saying that you can't find those things out later on, but being in a relationship, it is difficult to do so.
And I would say for anybody that's in a situation where it's like, your happiness is based on someone else, or their happiness is based on you, just know that even if you don't know how you're going to get there, because I feel like a lot of the times we don't start something because we're worried about figuring out how we're going to get to a specific place, right? So don't worry about how you're going to get there. Just take the first step of starting to get to know yourself. Like he said, figure out what hobbies you like. What are your passions? What are the things that make you upset? What are the things that make you sad? Same way that you got to know that person that you're in a relationship with, in a friendship with, or whatever, get to know yourself in that same degree. And when you start doing that, you'll be able to understand more of yourself. You'll be able to enjoy your company more. And you'll be able to kind of create and have more joy and happiness outside of anyone else.
I would also say too, as far as hobbies and everything as well, don't let, as long as your hobbies or whatever you like to do in your spare time isn't damaging to you and others, don't let the person that you're in a relationship with deter you from that. The thing that happens a lot sometimes is like you have a significant other and they'll come into your life and they deter you from your hobbies that you like to do because they don't like those hobbies. If it's not damaging to anybody, if it's not damaging to you, it's totally fine. A hobby is a hobby. A hobby is something that gives you space to yourself, so you can be able to work on being yourself and things. That's part of you. That's part of your personality. I just wouldn't say just don't let people come into your life and just chip away at that, because once they chip away at that, and after so much time is gone, you've lost that. And then if that person leaves, what do you have after that?
Facts. And sometimes those passions and those hobbies are the things that you need so that you can grow even more as an individual. So yeah, big facts. Yeah. But that's really all I had.
That's all I got.
So that's it for today. Until next time, here at the Hotline Check.
Miss you, Sabrina.
Yes. We miss you and we love you.
Miss you, Sabrina.
He loves you too. Oh my God.
What you think of that one?
What do you think?
I thought it was good.
I thought it was good too.
Don't do that.